Thank you so much. Good afternoon. Good afternoon for me, but good morning for you. Appreciate this opportunity to speak with you today. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Yes, this presentation I'm about to give is titled Balancing Three Logics of Judgment in Polish Academia. And this talk draws on my recently released book, Academic Judgment Between Logics of True and Game. Um, as I told you about this book explores how academic evaluations are made, specifically in the context of habilitation reviews in Poland. My aim is to today is to present the theory of judgment logics, examining both its epistemological, social dimensions, and also illustrate how the story works in practical research setting. However, because we all have slightly limited time, I'll skip some details on methodology. Instead, I'll focus on how this theoretical framework functions. Additionally, I published one article in research evaluation and one preprint about the similar topics. So this data also will be used today. Um, yes, I would like to start from this point that judgment is a constant presence in academic life. We evaluate papers, grant applications, teaching quality, promotion cases. So it's not solely through scientific reasoning, but also within a social framework. And this framework is here really important. And my interest lies in unpacking the structures we rely on to make this assessment. I argue that academic evaluations are shaped by several competing logics, each grounded in different assumptions, different values, different interpretative symbols. Um, Let me explain what I mean by a logic of judgment. So I think that this is a crucial notion here. The logics of judgments are the interpretative framework. So structured patterns that people use to determine what counts as valid, credible, valuable. Uh, they influence how academic work is seen and assessed. This idea draws on James March's distinction between the logic of consequences and logic of appropriateness, as well as Boltanski and Thevenot's concept of orders of worth. Um, However, my approach diverges by focusing on a personal symbolic repertoire through which individuals perceive and judge scholarly work. That in a sense, these judgment logics are micro-sociological. They don't aim to explain group behavior, but rather the individual level processes of evaluation, which are shaped by internalized symbolic resources. In this theory, I emphasize the social and identity-driven nature of decision, what is in line partly with March theory, but I also follow Boltanski and Thevenot, recognizing how justification draw on cultural templates or cultural repertoires. But my focus is squarely on academic assessment and its epistemic, symbolic aspects and dimensions. So I don't know. Mm, yes. Um, uh, there are three primary judgment logics I distinguish that I want to introduce today. So we have first the logic of true that is entered in epistemic standards, seeking knowledge, accuracy, scientific merit. We have the game S logic that is logic of scholarly community game that represent internal disciplinary norms, what is valued within academic communities, and evaluative game logic that reflects this external evaluative systems such as rankings, metrics, institutional performance measures, and um, each of these logic provides us distinct lens for interpreting the same object. So we can imagine that we could assess some article within this framework. The grand proposal that I just used this framework for theorizing the promotion cases. And I would like to show you some features of this logics because it is crucial for understanding how what I mean by this logics. So first, they operate on individual level. These logics are not abstract rules enforced from above, but they function through individual evaluators who draw on symbolic resources, experiences, and position. And this aligns with the microstratification approach inspired by Randall Collins. Then we have scientific symbolism. So each logic employs a set of symbols, such as true, impact, originality, efficiency, that are used to interpret and assess academic output. Then we have symbolic flexibility or symbolic atomism. So a single symbol, like for example innovation, can appear in different logics, but it will carry different connotations. For example, in the true logic, innovation may signal a conceptual leap, in game as some kind of strategic move. Uh, in game E, a requirement tied to policy or metrics. Then we have a sequential using of this logics. So these logics often operate in succession. An evaluator may begin with epistemic scrutiny, then shift to disciplinary norms, conclude with metric-based judgments, and this sequences reflects ingrained evaluation habits of this reviewer, what he or she assesses as more or less important. These logics are contextual dependent, so they are shaped by broader environment, by the institutional, disciplinary, and social context in which evaluation occurs. And for instance, a committee focused on policy outcomes may, for example, prioritize game E, while one in the theoretical discipline may privilege the logic of truth. So they are quite flexible in the sense as well that we can use them in different to ascribe them a different level of importance. So let me consider deeply all of these logics or each of these logics. So we can first look deeper at the logic of truth, which often underpins ideal notions of peer review. This logic centers on questions like, are the claims factually correct? Is the methodology robust? Does the work contribute meaningful knowledge? So this framework emphasizes methodological soundness, theoretical depth, uh, one word, the pursuit of truth. It presumes that academic work should aim at understanding the word accurately. Some key symbols associated with this logic include, first, the most obvious, the true, but we have also, for example, objectivity, there is a belief that knowledge should stand apart from the researcher's identity or intention. It's something especially significant when contrasted with more community-based logics. Some people argue that the ultimacy is also important factor when we considering the truthfulness of some sentence or statement. That, for example, some sentence should have some explanatory or predictive power, or maybe some utility that we need practical, technical, emancipatory knowledge. That so these are not mere ideas, but active frameworks that shape how scholarly work is interpreted and assessed in this evaluative content. And here we can compare this with logic of game S, because here this logic of scholarly community game reflects the inner working of the academic work. It's grounded in recognition, peer esteem, the strategic engagement with shared community norms. So here I use the metaphor of a game because employing this logic involves a shift in perspective. So it's not about true, but it's about seeing the field from above, understanding the landscape of peers, norms from, say, bird's eyes perspective. So here, judgment isn't necessarily about this abstract truth, but instead it's about what peers consider credible, significant, and respectable. This logic operates reflexively. It depends on awareness of this disciplinary expectation, informal networks, some kind of unspoken hierarchies, and reviewers draw on what they've learned through professional socialization. What kinds of work are respected, which topics are trendy, and which styles or outputs are seen as high status. This resonates with Pierre Bourdieu depiction in Homo Academicus of this work of academia as a symbolic battlefield, a contest for prestige and authority. And this game as is about mastering that field, understanding these unwritten rules that Bourdieu called practical sense. And here, the last logic that I would like to present is probably newest logic that we have in academia from maybe 70s. The logic of game E, so this evaluative game, is rooted outside the immediate academic circle. It is shaped by institutionalized evaluation systems, government policies, ranking agencies, some audit procedures. This logic emphasizes formalization and measurement. So it's less concerned with the epistemic substance of scholarship and more with quantifiable outcomes. So how often someone publishes, how many citations their work received, how efficiently they produce research, and so on. So here, we have also some kind of important symbols such as productivity, impact, efficiency and outputs, social value, diversity indicators, and so on. We know a lot of indicators of some of these symbols. Universities and founding bodies increasingly rely on these indicators to distribute resources. And the more interesting is how, in which relations this logic of evaluative game is with these two maybe older logics that we also have in academia. I would like to compare these logics. So I prepared this table to clarify some important factors. So first, I would like to discuss the sources of rules of for each of these logics. So the true logic generates its standards internally through scholarly debate, theoretical evaluation, methodological critique, and the same with game S. It also arises from within academic community through move more informally through tacit understandings and symbolic practices. But of course, game E is externally imposed. Its rules are introduced via policies, administration, regulations, and so on. When we consider speed of change, here also there are some similarities between logic of game and logic of game as they evolve gradually. So scientific consensus or cultural shift take time, but in contrast, game E adapts rapidly. So its criteria can shift overnight due to new policies, changing founding priorities, or legal reforms. We had in Poland in 2011 a very great reform, a very big reform that just introduced this logic of game just by one day. The entire system, the whole academia have to adjust or to try to match their performance to this logic of game in this form that is introduced. And then we have focus of evaluation. Logic of truth concentrates on this epistemic rigor, claims valid, innovative, well-founded research. Game S looks to alignment with disciplinary expectations, and game E zooms in on measurable performance. This was probably the most obvious, but I think that we should also discuss transparency, because here logic of true is relatively transparent because its procedures and standards are often codified in methodological texts, methodological handbooks, disciplinary guidelines. When we ask ourselves how to create some great research project, we can just capture these rules that we find in these handbooks. But game as these informal norms are more opaque. So these norms are embedded in some kind of relational dynamics, some informal hierarchies. So we have to be in the core of this community, for example, to appropriately understand which roles we can meet within our academia, within our local community, and how we can game these norms. On the other hand, game E is highly transparent. Metrics are published, tracked, institutionalized. Policies are very clear. There are in some law text, so it is probably the most transparent. We can find some in the game E the most transparent rules. So these distinctions are essential, especially since reviewers often apply more than one logics when writing a single assessment. And then I would like also to tell you something about tensions among these logics. Because these judgments are always shaped by context. So reviewers bring some symbolic languages they've internalized. we have some personal academic journeys. We have something that Randall Collins calls emotional energy, investment in particular ideas or ideals. So no judgment is purely technical. Every evaluation reflects a particular intellectual imaginary, and these logics can collide. And I think it is the most interesting when we see how these logics in one review or between reviews actually collide. A scholar guided by the logic of truth may struggle to gain recognition under game S norms, particularly if their work disrupts consensus or challenges existing hierarchies. The game E, meanwhile, often critiques game S for being subjective, informal, or even exclusionary. Uh, Proponents of metrics argues that standardized indicators ensure fairness, especially for younger academics who lack powerful networks. In post-socialist countries like Poland, game E gained traction during reform efforts that aim to make evaluation more objective and personalized. For example, Emmanuel Kluczycki wrote the book The Evaluation Game, and here it is really great displayed how these forms of thinking about metrics and biometrics could be collided with this subjective informal norms of academic assessment. And obviously, game S is also critiqued. Opponents argue that metrics fail to reflect true scholarly quality. They are vulnerable to manipulation. They lead to uniform, less imaginative research. They mask judgment behind a facade of objectivity. And we have this DORA declaration, Leiden manifesto. And to sum up, academic judgment is never neutral. Reviewers rely on different logics, and these logics overlap, interact, and sometimes directly contradict each other. Um, and I would like to uh, show you how this logic could be used. It's a theory that is thought to being useful for. So I think that we could ask the question like, how do academic systems manage the tensions between traditional disciplinary norms? We can also ask about how does the growing emphasis on bibliometrics affect the culture of peer review, and we can ask how to analyze individual scholars navigating this conflicting logics of judgment in promotion decisions. My empirical project to verify or to test this theory is based on the data sets of reviews from 2013 to 2019. And I conducted a large-scale analysis of academic reviews text. It includes 474 individual reviews from 195 habilitation cases in sociology. Um, and this data set that I use in the book, but in the articles that I displayed to you when we started, it was 174 negative reviews in from four disciplines: history of art, sociology, mathematics, and material engineering. Short overview about habilitation for those of you that may be not familiar with this Polish context. Um, Habilitation is a postdoctoral qualification and a major step towards academic independence. Until 2018, it was administered by a Central Commission for Degrees and Titles. Now it falls under the Scientific Excellence Council. And under the 2011, candidates were required to show a meaningful scholarly contribution to their discipline and evidence of sustained significant contribution and significant activity. Official guidelines also pointed reviewers to consider certain formal indicators. So here, even in this law, we can see the necessity to use all of these logics because we have but this assessment of content. We have also assessment of the candidate's outputs, sometimes his or her biography, academic biography, but also some types of metrics. And I would like to show you some results from this empirical research. So let me start with true logic. What we can see in this reviews from this point of view. This logic came into play when reviewers identified especially factual mistakes such as incorrect reference or conceptual misuse, methodological issues like unclear research strategies, vague theoretical frameworks lacking their clear definitions. And what was striking was the realist tone of reviewers that the reviewers adopted. They evaluated whether the scholarship was simply correct or flawed. They placed high value on depth of theory, precision on the concepts, internal consistency within the chosen scholarly approach. In contrast, in Logic of Game S, we had some very strong community expectations about respect for both Polish and foreign literature. So it was required to have some balance here. Publication in recognized Polish journals are also here the form of expectation. What is really interesting is the case of so-called self-plagiarism. I think that it is one of the most interesting thing in this reviews. And disagreement reflected diverse interpretation of acceptable practices. This criteria for self-plagiarism were really highly connected with academic and scholarly norms, but they're absolutely obscure because self-plagiarism, we could ask what exactly constitutes the self-plagiarism. Does it mean reusing our own prior text, maybe recycling findings, paraphrasing earlier work without citations? Reviewers responded differently. Some choose to exclude entire publications or specific sections from consideration. This lead to fragmented evaluation where different reviewers assess different sets of works in the same case. So it demonstrates how vague symbolic norms can produce inconsistent assessments. Here we could say that some of these reviews were incommensurable because the reviewers just assessed different, in fact, different outputs when they exclude some forms of articles that were alleged as self-plagiarism. In the context of Logic of Game E, this Logic of Game E emphasized metrics and quantifiable outputs, and it was interesting that reviewers used this citation metrics, journal rankings, cross-border research partnership very differently. What was especially surprising for me that this logic was often on the margins. Only a minority of reviewers relied on bibliometrics as decisive evidence of scholarly value, and for many, these measures were more of a procedural box to think than a core evaluative tool, despite it was a formal requirement to use this metrics. And this was just treated as a formal requirement. Um, among these reviewers, uh, it was absolutely not. They were not sure. I'm sorry, how to treat this bibliometric indicators. So their application varied very widely. Some reviewers, for example, trusted the metrics as presented, while others checked them against databases like Scopus, Google Scholar, Web of Science. They just checked them on their own. And often, bibliometrics were applied selectively. Some reviewers only counted outputs in recognized journals. Others dismissed some non-index work outright. So there is not shared standards for what measures, what metrics, um, what metric thresholds constitutes enough. So what is the sufficient value for some habilitation output? Uh, this shows that despite its premise of objectivity, the game E logic remains flexible and open to interpretation. It was a great question, for example, what is sufficient number of citation? It's 100 citation, 500 citation, or maybe 50 citation is enough. Um, there were some habilitation candidates that have 0 citation. So in some cases, this was not a limitation for writing positive review, but in this data set of negative reviews, these metrics were sometimes marginal, but still important arguments for denying this application. Um, we have in this reviews a lot of tensions. I think that we can distinguish at least 3 levels of tension. So tensions within individual reviews. So the single reviewer may downplay weak citation count by highlighting the candidate's premise or social contribution. So switching between logics is needed here. Sometimes we have disagreement between reviewers. One reviewer may reject a claim as factually incorrect, invoking the true logic, while another may accept it under game S norm because it's widely cited, for example, or widely recognized or treated as legitimated in this academic community. So this reflects epistemological distance, like a positive and critical scholar excel the same work. Within the same logic, we have also some tension because even reviewers using the same logic, like a logic of truth, disagreed on methodological rigor, for example, or theoretical merit. So logic serves here as a interpretive tools, not strict formulas. Um, the last part I would like to devote for cross-disciplinary comparison of reviews conclusions, especially because I try to recognize these final remarks, these sections that are called in Polish conclusions, that are typically justifies the recommendation. So in this conclusion, I expect to meet the most crucial reasonings for each of the review. And like you could see, when we compare these logics that are used in this reviews, in sociology, judgments focus heavily on theoretical and methodological strength. In mathematics and material engineering, reviewers lean more on shared norms, what their field expect. In history of art, both epistemic and symbolic reasonings are equally presented. What is for me very surprising, material engineering had a highest reliance on um, what is not surprisingly, material engineering had a highest reliance on metrics. Nearly half of this reviews cited bibliometrics. In contrast, history of art mentioned them in only 2 cases, but you could see on another slide this surprising result about material engineering, because um, this table focuses on reviews that use just one logic in final assessment. So I choose only this reviews that use one logic, and it giving us some sense of which reasoning actually draw decision. So importantly, in no field, metrics alone are decisive. So even in material engineering, reviewers rely on logic of true and logic of game S, but very rarely on the logic of game E. Even in more metric-heavy disciplines, it may be further studied, but it is, I think, a surprising result. This reinforces key insights. So academic judgments is layered. Metrics may appear in reports, but they rarely dominate. So interpretation, values, and community norms still shape how quality is recognized. And Assuming this presentation, what we could say about the story itself. The logic of judgment framework could be useful both for in-depth qualitative analysis and for identifying patterns across large data sets. This approach allows us to track recurring forms of evaluation, to detect inconsistencies within or between reviewers in a structured manner, and explore how different disciplines construct academic value. Ultimately, it helps us move beyond binary distinctions like objective versus subjective assessment, and toward a maybe richer view on how scholarly work is negotiated in practice. Obviously, I think that we need further studies to compare different, maybe cross-disciplinary, maybe cross-country patterns of evaluation. But this framework ensures some kind of comparability, that we can compare just this reviews just cross-disciplinary and cross-country. I will obviously try to exploit this topic further. Thank you so much for listening. I look forward to your questions and comments.